The following episode of the Maui Chamber of Commerce's Business Matters was originally broadcast on February 13th, 2024.
Honored to be here today with you, and I want to thank again our wonderful sponsors for the show, Mokulele Airlines. And here's our host, Pam Toomba, president of the Maui Chamber of Commerce, who's been very, very, very busy. And he's got a wonderful conversation today with a guy that I really respect, Jennings Imel, Vice President of the Western Region in the Government Affairs Division of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. So give us a little information, Pam, about what we're going to be talking about.
Well, we're going to start off talking with Jennings, and then we're going to interview Dany White, who is a small business owner. She has a company called Maui Memories, and her business was located in Lahaina. She's gone through a lot with the wildfires, and she's going to tell us about how she's been moving through them and how she has been pivoting to move forward. But just want to thank everybody for joining us for Business Matters today. Let's start off with Jennings Imel. He is the Vice President of the Western Region of the Government Affairs Division at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. This office is responsible for legislative and political grassroots activities in Arizona, California, Hawaii, Nevada, and Utah in support of the Chamber's national public policy goals. Before joining the U.S. Chamber in 2013, Jennings also worked in Washington, D.C. At the U.S. Association of Former Members of Congress and at the public affairs firm of Mercury, Clark, and Weinstock. Earlier, he worked in the California State Assembly and managed and worked on several successful congressional and state legislative campaigns, mostly in Southern California. Jennings received a master's degree in international affairs from the George Washington University and a bachelor's degree in political science and German from the University of California, Riverside. So we are so thrilled to have Jennings on again. Good morning, Jennings, and aloha. So great to have you on the show.
Good morning. Aloha, Pam. Great to be here, as always. Thank you.
Oh, it's our pleasure. You have a lot going on. And every night I turn on the news and it just seems like more is getting heaped on. But let's talk about so much happening with border security and the Ukraine supplemental bill. Can you tell us about where we're at on these two very important items?
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a lot of action, as you've been following on the Senate side, especially on really kind of making sure that we're helping our friends, our allies in Ukraine and in Israel, and then also providing some support for Taiwan as well. And this is something that's critically important, for U.S. national security interests, but also for the business community. It's why the U.S. Chamber has weighed in on this, and the fact that we need to be helping our friends abroad and making sure that we have a strong kind of deterrent-like posture internationally, and so that we're deterring bad actors, that we're deterring bad things from happening, because we know that's obviously not good for the U.S. national interests. It's not good for a lot of other countries, obviously abroad, and just kind of international peace. But it's not good for the economy. It's not good for supply chains. It's been terribly disruptive. We know that the war in Ukraine over the last 2 years has been extremely disruptive in so many different ways, on a human level, on an economic level. We see, obviously, what's been happening in the Red Sea lately with the unrest in the Middle East. And, of course, we've got a lot of concerns with what's been going on and kind of the rhetoric coming from China in terms of kind of what their aspirations are for Taiwan over the next couple of years. So it's important that the United States continues to have a strong posture in the world, and that our friends can continue to rely on us, because that makes kind of the world operate smoothly and it makes business work. So that's why we've been engaged in this process, and we were happy to see that today, this morning actually, the Senate did pass a supplemental spending package that provides funding for Ukraine, for Israel. There's humanitarian funding as well in Gaza, and funding for Taiwan. So this is a good news. It passed with bipartisan support, 70 votes out of the Senate. The path in the House is a little bit uncertain, but this good news is followed by a little bit of bad news from last week, and the fact that there was an attempt to do exactly this, to pass a supplemental spending package that would help our friends. That was also tied, though, with some really important border security provisions. And if you all recall, back last fall, it was Republicans in the Senate that insisted, both in the Senate and the House, but in this time, since this kind of first started on the Senate side, really on the Senate, that insisted that there would be strong border security provisions included in any kind of supplemental spending package for Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan. And so Senator Langford out of Oklahoma was essentially tasked with leading the negotiations on the Republican side with Senator Murphy, the Democrat, and Senator Sinema, the independent out of Arizona. They kind of took the charge over the next several months to craft bipartisan kind of border security proposals that would change the asylum program, parole, enhance border security, and then that would be tagged on to the larger spending package for Ukraine. That came together really well. We were supportive of all of those efforts. There were a lot of really good things in that bill. It was released last Sunday night, and pretty much within 24 hours, the bill was essentially dead. Indications were given on first the House side and then later on the Senate side that there was no interest in doing anything on border security, and a lot of it had to do with, well, there's politics, of course, and we're in a presidential election year, and just quite frankly, a lot of statements that weren't true about the bill, especially in regards to some of the changes that were in there for asylum. And it's really a shame because there were some good things that really would have cracked down on the abuse of the asylum system, which is driving the dysfunction at the border. As you all probably been tracking, we're seeing, anywhere between 200 and 300,000 encounters every single month at the border. It's utterly unsustainable. We're essentially at a catch and release kind of model that we're following where, our folks and facilities at the border are just simply overwhelmed. People are filing and claiming asylum, and they're essentially, told to show up anywhere between 5 and 10 years later for a court date to determine whether or not they actually are eligible for asylum. Meanwhile, they're kind of living in the country, trying to make ends meet, and it's really been not obviously a sustainable system, but it's been a burden for a number of communities. And we were pushing for something to happen on this front. There were some good ideas in that bill. Unfortunately, though, due to those factors I mentioned, some demagogueries in politics, some kind of untruths that were out there, it did collapse. And the reason why this is important, too, for the state of Hawaii is because there was some good immigration stuff in there. That would have added over 5 years, 250,000 more green cards, which obviously is important for everybody across the country because we need more green cards. We need more folks to be able to continue to work in this country. We have a workforce crisis. But also, I think the big picture is that if you can't get a border bill at a moment like this, when we have both sides wanting to do something, we have certainly an untenable situation at the border. If you can't get something that's focused solely on border security like this package, then how on earth are we going to be able to pass anything that deals with the broader immigration system and reforming what's been a broken system for the last 30 years? And that's a problem because Hawaii, it has a lot of immigration issues just like the rest of the states around the country, right? When you talk about per country caps on folks coming in, you talk about visa and green card processing, the visa waiver program, which is huge for tourism in Hawaii. All of these things need to be reformed and changed. And if you can't do something that's strictly focused on border security, then how are we going to tackle some of these other more complicated issues? So that's why it's a big problem. We were discouraged to see how everything kind of unfolded last week. But this week, they were able to pivot on the Senate side and at least pass the supplemental package for our friends abroad. And we'll see where it goes in the House. But kind of upset about how things unfolded with the border stuff, but we really appreciate, and I should mention, the Maui Chamber support on this and the fact that the Maui Chamber has been a supporter of our Liberty campaign, which has been pushing for fixing our immigration system and securing our borders. And we're going to continue to make that push in this Congress and in the next Congress.
Jennings, what are some of the big things you mentioned? There were concerns about certain areas that were just untrue. What are some of those big areas?
Yeah, I think that the 5,000 number that was thrown out there of, after 5,000 encounters at the border a day, once that average number reached 5,000 a day, that the border would be shut down essentially. And a lot of folks misconstrued that as meaning, okay, we're going to allow 5,000 people to illegally enter the country a day. That's not true. Actually, it really meant that we're essentially going to only allow ourselves to detain 5,000 people a day, because these people weren't going to be released into the country. They were simply going to be detained and then processed, because most of them are obviously claiming asylum. They would have to be processed between 90 and 180 days. They'd have to do multiple interviews to prove that they had a reasonable, fear that something bad was going to happen to them if they went back to their countries. And by the way, the interview process is going to be much more rigorous to determine whether or not they're actually eligible for asylum. So that 5,000 number, was misconstrued as, oh, we're allowing these folks to just come into the country, we're going to release them, when in fact that's not the case. We were going to hold them and then make sure that they went through the process. And by the way, that process is now down to 180 days, unlike where it is today, where the process is essentially up to 10 years, where folks are simply released into the country, given a court date, and say, hey, show up in 10 years. And that's obviously that doesn't work. And so it's really unfortunate that kind of got lost in translation. And then, the fact that there's $20 billion in the bill for border security alone, for funding CBP officers, ICE, U.S. Customs and Immigration, enhanced technology, even, for fixing parts of the wall and building new barriers along the border. So very interesting that kind of got lost in the bill as well. But just really unfortunate, some of the stuff that we heard going around.
Well, good to know, and thank you for the amazing work you're doing in that. As you mentioned, there is some really important pieces in the bill that we really want to see happen, and we do need help. We definitely have a tremendous labor shortage here now, and it's going to be exacerbated by the wildfires with a lot going on. So that's really important to us to see that it's done and done well. You've been working on, the tax extenders package and the renewal of R&D and other important business tax incentives. Can you talk a little bit about those items?
Yeah, that's where we've had some good news as well, kind of surprise good news, because I think a lot of people went into this Congress in the year, presidential election year. I mean, looking at how Congress struggled last year to be productive, the expectation was that it was going to be very challenging to get stuff done. I think that's probably still going to continue to be the case for the most part, as we saw with the border last week. But on the tax side, we did get an agreement at the beginning of the year between the chairs of the House Ways and Means Committee and the Senate Finance Committee on a tax deal that renews 3 important tax provisions for business. The big one that I'm sure a lot of you have heard of is R&D, research and development expensing. Immediate expensing for research and development, so that businesses that make the investment in R&D can expense that immediately, 100% the next year from their tax liability. And that's huge. That's something, though, that a couple of years ago was not renewed and essentially stopped. So a lot of businesses did not know that, made those investments in R&D, and then were surprised to find out the following year that they could not fully expense the total cost of that investment. Instead, it had to be amortized over 6 years. And so essentially that's like a tax increase, because the businesses weren't counting on having to pay that additional cost. So that's been a problem for a couple of years. R&D is in this bill, 100% bonus depreciation, very similar to R&D, but this is now for large capital equipment. So think big pieces of machinery, tractors, things like that businesses invest in. They can now write off 100% of that cost the following year. That was something that also had expired. And then interest deduction as well, right? So interest on loans and things like that that businesses have to pay for. Now they can once again continue to deduct that the following year. So those are the 3 big tax provisions that were renewed in this tax extenders package that passed the House with broad bipartisan support. I think it was 357 members in support. So that tells you a lot. Very few members in opposition. The Hawaii delegation, Congresswoman Takuda, Congressman Case, both supportive of that package. And on the non-business side, what it does is it expands the child tax credit from $1,800 per child to $2,000, phased in over the next couple of years. So it's a modest expansion. And that's really kind of where the hang-up was, Democrats and Republicans fighting over how big that was going to be. And how long the R&D stuff was going to be extended for and stuff like that. But we were happy to see that kind of come to a conclusion, that both sides came to a bipartisan agreement, passed it out of the House. Now we've got to get it out of the Senate. So it's going to be really important for the business community, for you all, to continue to engage Senator Hirono and Senator Schatz on this issue. Make sure that they understand that this is a big priority for the business community, and hopefully we can get this resolved in the next couple of weeks. I think if it's going to happen on the Senate side, this tax extenders package might have to kind of go along or kind of hitch a ride to some of the spending bills that are going to have to be passed here at the beginning of March, because that's when the government funding deadline is coming up. So big win though on the tax side so far.
Good, very good. I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah.
Okay, and another thing I know we're going to talk about is the Biden administration regulations on a number of things. One of them being independent contractors, which we continue to fight to protect independent contractors.
Yeah, this has been a long fight. The independent contractor issue has been one that's come up in a lot of different states. The most prominent example probably being California, right, with the AB5 bill that really makes it difficult for businesses to use independent contractors. And we're seeing this kind of play out at the federal level. There was an attempt a couple of years ago, if you all recall, with passing the Protecting the Right to Organize Act, the PRO Act. That failed, largely because of Senator Sinema and a couple of other Senate Democrats that opposed it. So it didn't go anywhere, last Congress when there was full Democrat control of both the Senate and the House. So now the administration has kind of pivoted to trying to do this through regulatory action. So the Department of Labor did release their final independent contractor rule last month. Essentially, it's a 6-factor test that's very vague, very complicated for employers. All 6 factors to determine whether or not somebody should be an employee or an independent contractor are equally weighted. And it's different from the current rule from the Department of Labor, which is a 2-factor test, which has to do with control of work and opportunity for profit and loss, which is much clearer for employers to navigate. But this new rule is going to be very complicated. Essentially, the burden of proof is going to be on the employer to prove why this person is an independent contractor and why they're not an employee, and why they're not, being paid a minimum wage and being paid overtime and stuff, because this all has to do with kind of that side of the equation. This is not a IRS determination. This is a DOL determination under the Fair Labor Standards Act. So this has to do with wage compensation. But very complicated. Unfortunately, there are a couple of things in it that, especially when you look at one of the factors stating that the work of the independent contractor should be different from the core work of the business, which that's going to be very difficult for businesses to prove. And so what ultimately the effect is going to be, though, is that employers are going to be overwhelmed by this, the burden of proof. They're going to have to work with their accountants and their lawyers. And a lot of times they're just going to put their hands up in the air and say, you know what, it's not worth it. It's safer just to either bring this person on as an employee or just not work with them altogether. So it's going to lead to fewer opportunities for independent contractors to get work. And that's not a good thing. It's not a good thing for employers. It's definitely not a good thing for independent contractors who value their flexibility. So it's a big problem. The implementation date is next month, March 11th. And we have expressed our concerns at the U.S. Chamber. A number of chambers, I think you all too, in Maui have expressed concerns about this. A number of chambers throughout the country have engaged on this process. And we are certainly going to be kind of looking at other ways we could respond, including litigation. But this is a bad one. And there's a lot of other rules that are coming, especially on the labor front, that are not good for business. And I think that it's safe to say that our litigation center at the U.S. Chamber is going to be very busy in 2024.
Yeah, this is huge, and actually, it's a huge problem because, as you point out, I mean, it really is going to limit businesses, and with our worker shortage, many people are turning to independent contractors who, many of them choose to just work part-time, or
Right.
they're experts in a particular area that we need and can use, and don't need a full-time employee, and so it's it's really important that we be able to have that consultant expertise and help. So thank you for all the work you're doing on that. Jennings, we are running a little bit late today. Unfortunately, we have a new process with Gary out, but I would like to bring you back on if we could another day, because I do also want to talk about, all the things that we need to continue to work on. And the independent contractors is a good example of that, defending our free enterprise. Can we have you join us again in a week or two? Or continue next
absolutely.
week?
Yep,
Okay.
absolutely.
Awesome. We will reach out to you and do that. But appreciate you for being on today. We've got such a weighty conversation, and it needs to continue because there are so many things our businesses are facing right now, and they need to understand what's happening at the congressional level. And we'll give them more information on how they can continue to ring in.
Yep. Happy to join, and thanks for everything that you do, Pam, in the Maui Chamber. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for all that you're doing. We so appreciate you, Jennings.
Great. Thank you.
Mokulele Airlines operates the largest commuter airline hub in the country, right here in Kahului. Fly Mokulele from Kahului to Molokai, Lanai, Hana, Waimea, Kona, and now Hilo. Mokulele also operates the only flights between Kapalua and Honolulu. There is never a middle seat on Mokulele, and every seat has a window and aisle. Visit mokuleleairlines.com and take your next flight from the newly renovated Mokulele Terminal.
And welcome back. We are listening to the wonderful show. Pam Toompop, I love that interview. It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Thank you for arranging that. I know that we're now going to be talking to a person who's very fascinating. I was reading a little bit about what you'd sent me about our next guest. And this is a perfect example of what happens. And I think we have our guest calling in right now. Yes, there we are. Okay, all set.
Oh, perfect. I'll introduce her while you get Dany on the line.
She's on the line.
Oh, fantastic.
Good morning.
Good morning, Dany. How are you?
Good. Thank you. How are you this morning?
I am wonderful. We are so thrilled to have you on the show this morning.
Thank you so much. I'm a little bit nervous. Never did that before, but
Oh, you're going to be great. This is very casual and a lot of fun. But let me take a moment to tell people a little bit about you. Dany moved to Maui in 1994 from Austria, Europe. She worked in retail and eventually bought a business that she worked at. Despite not having any business or management training, she was able to remain in business for 15 years before moving on and starting another business called Maui Memories. Part of her goal with this time around with the new business, Maui Memories, was to include local artists and vendors. And I have heard so many stories from people who have loved her shop. Dany operated her dream store, Maui Memories, at her dream location at the Pioneer Inn in Lahaina for 9 years. That was, of course, until being devastated by the wildfire. Although Dany has gone through a lot, she has refused to give up and eventually found a new location that she's going to tell us about in Paia, where she just signed a 3-year lease, and she will begin operating again in March. So, Dany, first of all, you are such an amazing entrepreneur. You've learned, doing this the hard way. You've learned how to do it all by yourself without formal training, which is phenomenal to see all you've achieved. Tell us, before we talk a little bit about the new store, tell us a little bit about Maui Memories and your store in Pioneer Inn.
The Maui Memories, it was quite a big store. I actually had 2 spaces there. So it was really nice because I could involve a lot of local artists. What I used to do is I went to a lot of the local craft fairs and I just approached them, and I asked them if they would like to be in my store. So we had a really nice variety between like clothing, jewelry, little knickknacks, lotions. And for me, it was very important to make like a comfortable environment for our customers. We try to play good music. and it was like all in wood. So it was, people always told us they liked hanging out with us and talk stories to customers, and they came back every year too. So it was just, I mean, I love going to work. It was my
Yeah.
second home.
I've heard so many people just say they had such great memories of the store.
Yeah, I was, it was always warmed my heart, and it validated all my hard work when customers told me that, that they love coming back and they had like a good feeling. And like I said, I'm really in contact with a lot of local artists too. So, which is really important for me.
Yeah, you built so many amazing relationships. So then the wildfires had hit, and tell us a little bit about what that was like to pivot and trying to find a new place in Paia.
It was, of course, like everybody else, it was devastating day. I mean, we were lucky we were closed because of the power outage, so I didn't have to worry about my employees there. But then it was, I guess, right afterwards, you just don't want to get up and to just cry all the time, not just about the business that's lost, but mainly about all the lives lost there too. And then I just actually was at the end of August, I saw an ad on Facebook that somebody is selling their store in Paia, and I was not really ready yet, but I figured, I have to be fast because a lot of people are not going to go for a different location. So I contacted her, and we had a really good relationship. It was her dream store in Paia, and she was moving off the island, so she wanted to find somebody she knew who would take really good care of her store too. But the whole process actually, I finally got the lease at the first week in January, so I was getting very nervous. But 2024, I guess, started out good for me. So we're like, we're preparing. We can't go in the store yet, but March 1st, I want to open up, and I'm so excited. It's gonna be under the same name, Maui Memories, and it's on Hana Highway between Milagros and the Old Charlie.
Oh my gosh, what a wonderful location.
I hope so, and I'm so really blessed that I got it, so.
I heard that people, it's so hard because, of course, we all love Lahaina, and nothing will ever replace those memories. But I did heard that a number of folks felt that Paia was one of those towns that was sort of relaxed and laid back, and had a bit of a feel of what Lahaina was in terms of a shopping experience and getting to know a local town. And so I'm so glad that you reached out early on and had that memory.
Thank you.
We've been working with so many businesses at the chamber and really trying to help people get financial assistance. And we
appreciate that.
Unfortunately, are finding it's, we have people who already have idle loans. They can't or don't want to take on any more SBA debt. Some of the funding that came down through the relief was the governor and to some of our local organizations. Everybody is saying it's just not anywhere close to being enough. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've been going through and trying to get some financial help as you look to and have been? I'm so grateful that you found this place and then that she had a dream like you, that it was so important to her to be here. And now that she's leaving, you've got a wonderful space to move into. What has it been like on the financial side to once she's lost as much as you have, try and start over and to bootstrap when funding's not available?
It was very tough because, like you mentioned, like many other businesses, I still had my COVID loan. I was paying it off every month, the $900. So, I mean, it's still a lot of money I have to pay back there. So when when FEMA sent me to SBA, I was thinking about it, but I'm like, I don't want to go too much over my head. And so I'm like, I had some personal savings too, where I'm like, that's what I did before. I put some of my personal savings into my business then. So because I'm buying an existing store, so I had to come up with money there too. So it was a scary situation. And I did get the bridge grants. I'm very thankful for that. So I got approved for that. I didn't get the funds yet because I had to send them the invoice, which I just, for the new purchase. So I'm very thankful for that. So that's a big help. And besides that, I'm just really hoping, that I have my daily sales. I'm going to be working there a lot by myself again. I'm going to have one employee just to save money, and get financial stable again.
Yeah, yeah, it's gonna take time. And that it's interesting you mentioned that on the bridge grant as well, um, which are helping everybody kind of fill in. A lot of people are, saying the same thing you are, that there's been, they've gotten an award, but they haven't gotten the money yet. There's been a lot of kind of back and forth over matching up both invoices and receipts. So
Yeah.
are you close now? Are you close to getting that? Because I know people have been waiting, a while.
Since I just purchased this store where I wrote the check for it, like, I think it was like last week. And, I mean, that's way more than the bridge grant, So for me, it was actually, I just got, and I purchased not just the store itself, but there's inventory in there and fixtures which fall under the requirement to get the bridge fund. So
Yeah.
what I did, I just faxed them the whole invoice and the check then, and hoping, that I get the money then soon, just to help out for new inventory. I mean, I want to put some other new inventory in there.
Right, your inventory. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I hope that comes through, and let us know. Just literally within the past week and a half, I've had 5 different companies call and say this is taking a lot longer than they expected, and it seems to be really kind of matching things up. And in some cases, they want something that literally says invoice and something that, either receipt or a canceled check, on items often like rent that, if you have a long-term lease, you get a statement. It doesn't necessarily say invoice. So we've been hearing some stories about just little terminology things that have been holding up the money, and we know people need this money right away.
Yeah, it is to start a new
Yeah.
business again. Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't hear what you said.
I just that the money is really important, just so you have. It's really important because when I had one location, actually when I started in Lahaina, I didn't have a lot of cash, so I couldn't, totally fill up my store with the merchandise, and it responds in your sales, and it's like a little circle. So it's important
Right.
to have money for inventory.
Yeah. So, and I appreciate you sharing, and it's a tough call. A lot of people have been talking to us about, again, they've already got an idle loan. They're worried about taking on more debt. And one of the things that I learned when the SBA administrator was here recently is that in many regions, and, an example like Florida, who's been hit time and time again, hurricanes, that actually I was floored to hear that sometimes businesses have 4 and 5 idle loans.
Wow.
But one of the things that they did share, and we've been sharing with people along the way, so it wasn't new. But I just don't know anybody that I've heard has gone through the steps to try it and has had success. But you can also ask for reconsideration on, or even look at maybe getting some of the amount on your existing loan waived, and getting some help with another idle loan. So just keep that in mind, because unfortunately we've heard a lot of stories where people have been declined on idle loans, and so that had a lot of people saying, well, I'm not even sure I want to try, or people have had to, many people have had to apply more than once, hoping to continue to get reconsideration. But if we can get the loan and help people get the loan, then once they get it, they have time that they can wait. They don't have to take the money out right now. In your case, though, that money would be really helpful. So some things to think about.
Do you know when the deadline is for this one?
Pardon me?
Do you know when the deadline is for this one to apply
Yes,
for it again?
I believe it's coming up May 24th.
Okay.
You want to apply before May. And, we also had extensive discussions with the administrator to say that people need help walking through the loan process.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are people in the Kihei office, they call it the BRAC, but there are people in the Kihei office. And if you call our office at the chamber, we'll reach out to you. We have your contact, but I'll have somebody reach out to you to help you connect with them. But for those listening, if you're stuck and want to share your experience, we're trying to collect data because we just did a listening session with the administrator, and we brought several people together. There were 5 people in a room of 10
Okay.
who were struggling with their idle loan. And then there were others who just hadn't tried because they'd already heard the struggle. But even if you are awarded it and you're not sure if you want to use the money yet, you've got time to decide, and they can walk you through
Okay.
it. And they've gotten an extended time. We used to say 6 months, but they've gotten a longer period. So there's things that are also changing within the
Okay.
system. And
Well,
I
thank you for that
understand too
info.
that you were unable to get help from FEMA.
No, what I heard, because I'm in contact with a lot of the business owners too. I think all the business, that's what I heard from the businesses. We all applied for it. We were denied, and they said you have to go to SBA.
SBA, yeah, yeah. And so I know that was very frustrating for people because they were there and able to help homeowners, but SBA did the loans to the businesses, and apparently that is a process that they do. I don't know exactly when that got instituted, but FEMA tries to make contact with everybody as a sort of an umbrella approach.
Okay.
And a lot of people were saying, they were surprised and frustrated to even have to go through that part of the process when they were just going to direct you straight to the SBA. So they felt that it was a huge challenge, and I know, as I know, you've mentioned that they're paying so much on to the rent on the homeowner side, and that it is actually more of their role than the commercial side. So I understand that you've been watching and seeing, and maybe you can talk to us a little bit, and I'll share more as well on what's happening with increasing commercial rent because there's a demand. What were you hearing about? Thankfully, you've been able to buy a location, but what are you continuing to hear about increasing rent and people who are impacted by that just purely to the incredible demand for commercial space?
What I was, because it took so long to get my lease in Paia, was in the meantime, I was still going around, to look at different places too. And especially, I live in Kihei, and I was in the Kihei area here there too. And, I did hear, when you see it going out of business, of course, I walk in there, and I'm going like, well, do you know who's coming in and why are you leaving? Can I have the information of the management company, to get in contact with them? And then there were a couple places, they said their lease was up, and they just decided not to renew it because the lease amount went so much up per month. And that actually a store from Lahaina already got it.
Yeah.
So they signed out. So they left their location. And so that was kind of sad for me.
A lot about also those who, we're still coming out of COVID. So many people who were shut down during COVID had back owed rent and tacked that on, some of the landlords. If rent relief wasn't offered, one of the ways they did it was they gave them the relief by saying you could pay that at the end of your lease.
Yeah.
And now if there's saying to people who are, especially even in Kihei, where they weren't in the wildfires, but they are, still struggling from the reduced visitor count that they were told they had to pay it on demand. Before they would get a new lease, they had to catch up on what they owed from COVID.
Yeah.
And if they couldn't, then and pay a higher rent because of the demand from those displaced from Lahaina, that they would have to be out. So
That's true.
yeah, and I'm sure you must have heard that a number of times.
I did, and then it's also, if you know about commercial leases, I mean, they're not cheap. It's not like people always think, a lot of people think when they hear the sales you have today, it's like, oh my gosh, the business, especially the small business owners, they must be so rich. But it's like with the leases, we have trouble to pay that. We are lucky if we can pay the monthly leases, and stay on top of that. But when we get behind, like after COVID, and I have to mention that my landlord inside the Pioneer was amazing during COVID with all of us. So we were very thankful for that. But it's really hard for businesses, to do it extra.
Yeah. I remember one of my first calls was a gallery and chamber member, and it was a gallery in Lahaina, and the rent per month on Front Street was $25,000 every month, and they were shut down, for 4 months.
I think 6 or 7 months, yeah.
They also had another gallery further out, and lost one because they just couldn't keep up with those rents when they had nobody coming in their doors. And
Yep,
to have it
have to do.
on, as the recovery period was also slow as we started to recover. These burdens are huge.
Yeah.
Before the wildfires, and now it's been a huge challenge. It's just grown astronomically. So I'm so grateful that you have a place, but I understand you've put it all on the line for this new store.
I am putting it all on the line, and I'm giving it, I'm definitely, like I said, I love retail and having my own store. And I definitely, giving it one more try. This is going to be my third location in the last 10 years. Maybe that's the charm. So.
Well, there are stories about that. But sometimes it takes two, and it's the third time on that there's stories about that. And somebody was sharing some of those with me recently. And, it continues to show how steadfast you are. Let's talk a little bit about some of the new products. With the store that you obtained, does it diversify your product line at all? Or, are there things, and is it more of the same products, but maybe different brands? Or what kinds of things are in the store that you're going to be starting off with in March?
It is for right now. Like I said, I paid for the inventory she has in there. So she has mainly dresses, women's dresses in there, some T-shirts and some kids wear, and then some knickknacks. So I did really well with T-shirts in Lahaina. So I'm gonna put a few more T-shirts in there, but also I'd like to make it diverse again. So usually what I like is when people come in and pick like different things and up, not just 5 T-shirts, but they find some lotions for it, they find a piece of jewelry, maybe some artwork. So it's going to be a little bit challenging because it's only half the size I used to have.
Yeah.
But at the beginning, I think what I'm just going to do is I'm going to set it up, give it a couple of weeks, and then see, what people are asking for and what they're looking for. But it will be kind of the same concept as my store in Lahaina, just on a smaller scale. I can't have that many artists in there anymore, and it's going to be on a smaller scale.
Yeah. Well, we can't wait to see about that. And see how it's going to look. So is there going to be a big opening day?
I'm usually what I do is I open up to have like a soft opening. I can open up my door March 1st, and then I do like 2 or 3 weeks later. That's what I did with my previous stores. I have a Hawaiian blessing, and then I have an opening with some poo-poos and some orange juice and champagne and that.
Ah, that sounds amazing. Well, I know that as you're going through all this, and I know that you and so many others are also hoping and waiting and looking for what kind of grant opportunities there are, and we've been watching bills come through the state legislature with trying to fund so many new things, all things kind of wildfire, mostly looking at resiliency. And
Mm-hmm.
I know that you were questioning and saying too, we really need grant money. People don't need more loans. They're really
Yeah.
looking for grant money.
Yeah, I totally agree. So we're
Yeah.
hoping, and we're always doing, which is really nice too, because I'm in a group chat, especially with some previous store owners from the Pioneer Inn, and it's like whenever we hear about something, we text each other and we let each other know about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and we also continue to put things out at the chamber and make people aware of things that we're finding, and I know a lot of people, we're trying to work on right now some grants and things that we can put through on behalf of numerous people that that aren't used to writing grants and looking at how we can help different groups sustain their livelihood while things are really slow and things are trying to come around. Um, and working with local manufacturers through our Made in Maui County program, trying to help them pivot as well. So we're trying to get some different funding in to help people make those changes, but it's a hard road right now. And
I
so
can
I do
imagine.
want to let people know this Isabel Disman, who is here, who's the administrator for the SBA, and she was here last week and met with a number of businesses on her trip here, as well as nonprofits and others trying to get grant money. There was a question by one of our businesses from Lahaina who said they were even applying for the SBA loan because they already had an idle loan, but they were applying for another one, really hoping that if they got it, it would be forgiven because
Mm-hmm.
they were, they saw that in Paradise, some of those loans were forgiven. And the administrator explained that if the loans through the EIDL program are forgiven, it has to be done through an act of Congress. And
Oh,
that
okay.
that Congress would have to forgive those loans. That the department under the SBA, they manage and run the program, but the Congress would literally have to do that. But what she explained is that in the situation in Paradise, California, is often the loans were paid for by philanthropists and very generous people who came forward and helped those businesses pay off the loans. And so we don't know how that's going to go, but it was at least it's helpful to understand why the SBA can't just forgive the loans, that they really take an act of Congress to do. And it also lets us know that we could be advocating with Congress on the challenges that we face here in Hawaii with a very high living wage, with a very high cost of doing business, with extraordinary housing costs and an extreme shortage of housing right now, which also is an area that has people paying a lot more, especially those displaced. We're seeing astronomical amounts spent on the rent to try and get people in units right now that
Yeah.
are extremely high when we can build housing for less than that. So,
Looking for that.
yeah, you're looking for housing?
I actually, yeah, I used to live in Ohana in Kike, and I had to move out. That was just last week, so everything fell together at the same time. So I'm actually staying with friends right now. They're not here on the island, so I can stay here for a few months because it was just overwhelming focusing on the business and finding new homes. So I'm just
Oh,
opening up a business and then I'm going looking for a two-bedroom somewhere.
okay. Well, we're going to call you from my office after this and get some information to you on
Thank
that.
you.
It is very hard to find rentals, and I don't know of a two bedroom in Kihei, but I do know of a two bedroom somewhere else. So we'll check in with you after the show and see if
Thank
we
you.
can't connect you there and put you on our list.
Okay, that would be awesome. Wow, really appreciated all the help too for all the other businesses too, and just to put the word out there and explaining everything a little bit better to us because it's overwhelming, you know.
No, it really it is, and I can't say that I've gone through it to at the level that you have. We're just doing our best to help as many people as we can. I know the people in Lahaina have just gone through such tremendous devastation, and it is really exciting though to hear, Dany, how well you've done and how well you have just continued to push forward, and you have been up against tremendous obstacles.
I thank you
And it
so
just
much.
shows
Pam, I just want to let you
how
know
good
we're just about out of time.
Okay, well, Dany, thank you so much for being on the show today. We appreciate having you on. And
Thank
as I
you.
said, you're very welcome. And literally, after the show, I'm going to reach out to Amber of my team and we're going to call you
Okay,
and get a
that
hold
would
of
be
you.
awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much. And to all listening, we hope you've enjoyed Business Matters today. It always goes quick. We always have so much great information to cover. But we just want to send you blessings and best wishes for a beautiful Maui day and week. And thanks, Cindy Palos, who's in as our technician today, but holistically for all you're doing to help us. While Gary's out, we always appreciate you. Gary Kurzer.
Aloha.
Aloha, thank you so
Aloha.
much.